all of you for joining us, taking the time out of the middle of your day to be part of the industry's first Cloud AV Summit. So I want to bring our panel on, and I want to talk to our panel about everything that we have to talk about today. And I first want to have a chance to have everyone introduce themselves. I want to start with you, Pam Hoppel, as the president of Legrand AV. First off, you've been in the industry now not quite a year, but I'd love to hear your perspective on what it's been like to be in our industry, and introduce yourself at the same time.
Thank you. Well, yeah, if you recall, I think you were my first interview when I first came on. So
I was honored.
Yeah, exactly. The honor. Yeah. So I'm Pam Hoppel, president of Legrand AV, and it has been almost a year. So I came from plumbing, HVAC, fire, and security. What I found is there are a number of similarities. I mean, business is business, and paths to market, especially when you deal with installers and distributors and the different type of integration elements, very common. Related to this topic, I think probably what's been most similar is the impact of some of these macroeconomic factors. Labor is increasing, securities requirements are increasing from a technology perspective. All of that super relevant to the industry and to what we're talking about today. So thanks for having me.
Sorry about that. Yeah. And you're one of the first manufacturers to actually adopt the cloud. And we're going to talk about that. And we actually have a case study on how you're doing that we're actually going to show a little bit later today. And that's important because if the manufacturers don't adopt this, it's never going to actually happen. We got to get the manufacturer adoption as quickly as possible. Scott, would you agree with me? Introduce yourself and tell me what you think.
Yeah, 100%, Gary. And you kind of nailed it in your intro. It's kind of the Wild West right now. I'm Scott Walker, president and founder of Waveguide. Maybe opposite of Pam, I've been doing this 35 years. So maybe like Eric and Gary, we can count the decades and the epochs that we lived through in AV, from analog to AV over category cable to networked AV, and now to this cloud era, and then eventually to AI era and all that. While I'm a panelist today, I'm also interested in the discussion. I think it's something we're all grappling with and working with our clients on, because ultimately the client has to own the largest part of this responsibility, but we can set the table every step of the way with the solutions that we're designing, that we're integrating, that we're manufacturing, and that we're operating. And I wear two hats today. Waveguide is both an independent design consultant for the last 28 years. For the last 20 years, we've also been in AV operations, what we call technology hospitality. So we're running headquarters for a lot of the big Fortune 500 companies out there. So we wear those two hats. It's actually about 70% of our business is carrying and feeding for these systems every day in the field.
Yeah, you're in a unique position. We go from manufacturer to designer to integrator. Eric Snyder, you know, interestingly enough, you're probably one of the, if not the most respected technologist in our industry that works for an integrator. Can you introduce yourself for those 4 people that don't know who you are?
Sure. I'm Eric Snyder. Worked with the group over at CTIN through our large growth that we've done over the years. What's interesting for us is that I was very technical, but I had a great mentor in John Laughlin, who's like, "Hey, man, you know what? Don't try to predict the future, a year out. Everyone who's trying to predict that is wrong anyway. What's real important is stay close to the clients and predict 6 weeks out or predict 6 months out, right? So, and that way you can be very agile in this environment. And I think this discussion is very good for that, right? And you kind of can put a lean philosophy behind it. And what we can bring to the table is that we're an incredibly diverse company. We had to change our name from Conference Technologies to CTI because we're doing everything from stadiums. We're corporate on site at some of the world's largest, players out there. So we're a very diverse company with live events in all kinds of markets. So maybe can kind of bring some insights to the table here on more verticals than just the conference rooms, even though we do a ton of those. But there's a lot of stuff going on in broadcast, a lot of stuff going on in some other areas too that actually tie into this conversation.
And let's be honest, you're one of the fastest growing integrators in the world. You've had record sales year this year, and I don't think a whole lot of companies can make that claim. And then finally, to end user, you're the person, Ron, who's got to figure out how to keep this stuff continuing to work. That's the key. We can make it work when we first put it in, but your team, because EY, you're not the kind of company we're going to be able to come in and out of and just jump over to someone's computer and load a new software tool on. You're the kind of company it's going to have a very secure, we are in control network to basically protect not just your employees but also your clients. So you got to keep this stuff operating after Scott designed it and Eric put it in. So introduce yourself and talk about that.
Sure, thanks. Hi, I'm Ron Sclaver. I am what only a Big Four accounting and consulting firm could call the global lead for the in-office meeting experience, which is a fancy way of saying AV services for EY. And Gary alluded to our scale. We've got about 14,000 conference rooms in 750 offices around 160 countries. So there's a lot of stuff floating around our estate.
That is a lot.
And monitoring and managing it, or even knowing what's where, is very, very important to us because it's a lot of money. I am here today representing the end user perspective because having done a few of these webinars, we learned something right along with everybody else. And so I'm very interested today in hearing just how aligned the manufacturer, designer, and integrators' perspectives are with my needs and my ideas as a customer, because ultimately it's my budget.
Yeah.
I have to spend it wisely, which is not an easy thing to do sometimes. So it's interesting to see how aligned we might really be.
Well, I'm going to actually throw the first question to you because you're the one that's ultimately, you already have cloud management systems because you're already doing it on the IT side. We're trying to do this on the AV side. So I want to kind of, to put everything in context, what does the cloud mean to you from the AV side, Ron?
So it's more than just monitoring and management. So UC is the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Okay, and more and more the UC platforms are starting to deliver features that were traditionally found on devices. So what's happening is you're starting to see certain features delivered at the edge, smart camera, a PC on a rack in the corner of the room, or out in the cloud itself. And so as an end user, what we're working out is what really belongs at the edge, what can I manage in the room, and what can I push all the way out? So to me, the cloud is essentially a delivery mechanism for some, but not all of what I need to do in the room or about the room.
I know that part of that is going to be a single interface. Like best case world, Scott, a single interface that allows you to provide your clients with the ability to manage everything. And one day that everything would also include what they're currently managing with whatever platforms they have right now. Maybe that's smart building platform management system. Isn't that the vision?
It is, and it needs to play by the, kind of grown-up IT security rules and look like something they're familiar with, not something that we cobbled up in cowboy land over here. And it does sort of need to be one cloud tool to rule them all would be the ideal situation, because it can take us 18 months to get IT to approve a device to go on the network that they haven't previously approved, and the project may be open by then. So we got to get way ahead of that curve. The best practice for decades in this industry was get the systems to opening day and then freeze that in amber so we don't wake up the velociraptors and just leave it alone. We can't do that in this UC era, certainly not with the UC compute device. We'd be hamstringing our client to 3 year ago, technology and feature sets, and we need to keep the security update, happening. So that freezing in amber right now isn't the case with the UC compute, but it still pretty much is with the peripheral equipment today because it's such a mess to try to, make that happen in an orderly manner. One thing we as designers should should be hung out to dry if we don't do, is work with our end user clients to simplify, simplify, simplify. Have as few different manufacturers as humanly possible across the enterprise, so that Eric only has 5 cloud tools today to deal with, not 50. So that's one of the mitigating things we can do as the industry and the manufacturers maybe start to align their tools into more of an open platform that we can put under one pane of glass.
Well, Pam, your company with your leadership has become a bellwether for the rest of the industry to follow. Like, you're actually there's a couple of handfuls of companies that have gone all in on the cloud. One of those is Legrand AV and Legrand AV, and you are a glue company. And I know maybe you don't like this term. We talked about this when I was first introduced to you. You're the company that kind of holds the industry together. You're used behind the scenes and all this stuff that we see in front of house. What are the challenges, or what should say is what is your strategy with cloud specifically? And how has that changed since you've started to integrate the cloud with Middle Atlantic, as an example?
Yeah, I'm so disappointed in myself that I don't have a Jurassic Park reference, because there's amber and glue and velociraptors. It feels like an opportunity here. Our strategy, very simply, me coming in from the outside, this integration and this cloud opportunity feels like the biggest opportunity for Legrand AV in particular, just because of the broad portfolio of products that we have and are what may be a unique value proposition for us. So there's a selfish element to that. But beyond that, very simply, we will win accounts with cloud connectivity. And so for me, if we can increase the value, you mentioned some of the MAP products. If we can increase our value in those RackLink products, then we're going to do that in any way, shape, or form that we can. So the second piece, I alluded to some of the drivers on the macroeconomics that were across industries. For us, as we were really building and solidifying this strategy, we look at what are the new problems that we need to solve going forward. And, Scott, you and Ron both alluded to these a little bit. We've got enhanced security issues. We've got the decision making and where that control has to be. We have to make it as easy as possible, because it's so much more expensive to employ the management of those devices. So how is that problem something that we can solve as a manufacturer? It to me makes it even more important to have this cloud integration strategy.
And in fact, Legrand has adopted Excite's platform, which is really important. We're actually going to do a platform tour with the guy who knows the platform better than any human alive right now, and that's Andrew Gross, which you'll meet a little bit later today. So I want you to stay tuned for that, because it's going to be important for you to kind of understand like how this actually works and how it's going to work in the future. But Eric, I'm going to direct the next question to you, because you have a very tough job of deciding when to go all in and sort of how to connect these things together, because you're going to be responsible for when the customer says, is this going to work? You got to be responsible for responding yes. So what are the challenges with the current state of the cloud monitoring and management in the industry? And as a systems integrator, what's the biggest change you're looking for from where we are today to where we want to be in the future?
Yeah, I mean, we still got like you were saying, some, zero trust networks, right? What's amazing is that Microsoft put more things on a client's network than anything that's ever been done, right? No. And then all of a sudden, well, we want to do Teams, and then we're figuring it out. And when it comes from what's interesting, when it comes from a C-level decision for culture, then it floats through the IT department, there's ways to make it happen then, right? And there's a whole conversation there, but seeing it across the industries with the cloud, seeing the marketing side of doing everything to the cloud and seeing reality a little bit, there's a little bit of disconnect there in certain sectors. But the possibilities like Dante Cloud, I know it's not a product that we're really talking about here, but I mean, basically I can send audio up faster and get to a satellite, go do Patrick's voice for the hockey game and come back, or a Marvel superhero in the broadcast world. That's not possible without the cloud, right? So there's enormous opportunity, but yet at the same time, it's got to be, and Ron can answer this better. We're going to be using a lot of edge devices to get to that cloud, and how we want to manage those edge devices to get out there, I think. And then what's everyone's tolerance? And even if they have the right network set up for it, because there's also just in basic network setup right now, I mean, you got switches out there that are being web managed that can't even do QoS, right? I mean, really locking stuff down and going to the standard, which is great for security, and then how much openness the client's going to do, I think is really a sit down, have a conversation with each client and figure out what the tolerance is going to be for it.
But I want to shout out to Ron for having the best branding on the screen by far. It's all the shame. As a branding person, I feel completely embarrassed. I do see your small reference there, Scott. It's very professionally done. I do appreciate that. But Pam, you and I got to do a better job here.
I know.
I want to throw out the next question to Ron. How important is this at this moment, Ron? Cloud management, cloud platform, or standardization of the cloud in our industry? How important it is to you right now as an end user?
So on the one hand, hugely important because AV is IT. Anybody who doesn't believe it has their head too far into the sand. Yes, I've had that argument with lots of people over the years. But if AV is in fact IT, and the IT operating model is all about standards, and it's all about uptime, and it's all about remote support, remote monitoring, then the only way you're going to be able to do that is through the cloud. Now, the manufacturers have to ask themselves, though, what is it this end user, the enterprise, really wants to do? I've got one display manufacturer trying to sell me a display and talking about their cloud management platform and how we can set every display in the world remotely so that EY yellow behind me is EY yellow. Well, on the one hand, that's really cool. On the other hand, I couldn't care less. I got bigger fish to fry than that. And what I really want to know is heartbeat monitoring. It is that simple. When you're talking about this kind of scale, just tell me if it's down. If I can reboot it remotely, fabulous. But if not, let me know. I got to call somebody in the office and have them run into the room and take a look what's going on. So cloud is hugely important, but keep it in perspective. What are we really trying to accomplish?
Yeah, everyone was shaking their head when you said that. That's at the base level. That's what we need. But we got to go a little bit better than that. And I think from my perspective, I feel like we need an open standard. I feel like we need to have that connectivity available to everyone. And that's why I really like the Excite platform. I wrote about this in my crystal ball at the beginning of the year. I kind of accidentally discovered Excite. I mean, they've been to InfoComm, but I hadn't really spent any quality time with them. But once I got a tour, I understood, okay, yeah, they're definitely looking out for themselves because they make a platform, but their platform is open and compatible with any other platform you might already have. So for example, if you're using Epson's management platform, they can connect to it. If you're using any brands, for that matter, a cloud system or remote management system, they can connect to it so that they have a single pane of glass sort of layered on top of everything. Eric, I'm guessing at a minimum, that's the standard that you want so that you can remove all those other panes of glass and have just one.
Yeah, I agree with you. Everyone's looking for a single pane of glass. What's interesting though is how it's going to be consumed. Does that make sense? A great question back to Ron would be, hey, Ron, would you pay for that service? Or if it's included in this particular product, would you buy it, right? I mean, that's kind of the question.
I want him to answer that actually, because Ron, would it be better to bundle it with the product or sell it separately?
So it depends. Sorry. Worst possible answer. But to answer it though, let me build on a point that Gary made just a moment ago. Right? There's a lot of disincentive for the manufacturers to have open standards. Separate conversation, another webinar, but they're there. Okay. If I have no choice but to have multiple platforms, then what I really want is some layer across the top that lets me tie it all together.
Interoperability.
Yeah, as a component of it, but simply visibility and reporting. And maybe that's my, not just a pane of glass to see what's happening, but maybe that's my entryway to go into something like an Excite, for instance, as the way to get down to, say, XIO or Lens or Sync or Direct or whoever, and manage the device through the platform that I'm forced to have. But don't make me train everyone how to use 6 or 7 or 8 different platforms. Give me one that can lay across the top. Would I pay for that as part of the device? I don't know, because our estate is, in quotes, standards driven. We're trying to buy the same manufacturers, but there is exception after exception after exception. It might be easier for me to just worry about it by the room. It depends on the functionality available. It's not an easy answer.
I can tell
Sorry.
Eric wants to say something. Go ahead, Eric.
No, that's right. Even though you're paying, you may not know directly you're paying for it, but Dante, for example, do you look for devices with Dante? Do you look for devices with NDI, right? So, you're saying your standard, I mean, not an open standard, but it is a standard that you can manage, right? So would you go look for devices with that? They're going to embed that cost in there somewhere, right? Does that help define or clarify that question a little bit?
Yeah, and the answer, broadly speaking, would be yes, where possible. Because by trade, I'm an IT guy.
Sure.
We're all about standards. So yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, Pam. A lot of manufacturers in the industry invented their own cloud. Basically, started from scratch and came up with their own cloud, invented out of nowhere, and really, it may have just simply been they knew they had to have it, but didn't know where to go get it. You, as a very big brand, decided to partner with Excite and to have an open platform, basically, by doing that. Has that benefited you yet, or how's that benefited you? And what's been the feedback from the customers that are adopting it?
Yeah. So for me, and by the way, if you do have the manufacturer's discussion on the pros and cons of this, I want in, because I have some strong opinions on that. For me, I think it's a very natural progression of technology strategy, if you will. I think everybody goes in. I think of my own, personal phone and app use. I don't know if anybody else gets really annoyed at when you go to shop somewhere, you download a new, like personal lock or device in your home, and now you've got 15 different apps controlling everything. I mean, this is a personalized version of what our customers are experiencing. And so you can take one of two routes. You can say, I am the leader and I believe that I can provide value that is unique in this app. I'm going to use that as an example. Or I can aggregate with someone and let them provide that value and bolt on and leverage them as an extension of our business. So for me, this is a matter of focus. I look at my team and we have unbelievable engineers and they are really good at what they do. If I need to build capabilities to do what Excite does, as an example, I would be starting. First of all, I would probably be trying to steal their engineers to begin with. Which, what's the use in that? I don't want to make anybody mad. So we don't want to do that. But also, that's not my core capability. I want to really stick and focus in the manufacturing space where I can excel and where my engineering talent is, and then leverage partners. And if I think about where the technology is going on, the evolution, with the initial statement, think about artificial intelligence. The smarter this technology kind of broadly gets, the more specialization is going to happen. So partnerships inevitably are going to have to expand. We're all, as manufacturers, going to have to be more open to that. And it's not just this kind of cloud platform. It's everything going forward.
Yeah, it's interesting perspective, because I think that what you have realized as a manufacturer is that having unique, differentiated, and only available by you features isn't necessarily going to be the winner in the future. The future is going to be the relationships and the compatibility and the collaboration, I think, is what's going to win out in the long run. Scott, Anthony Paoletti's watching this, and he said, great panel. So you got to be careful how you answer this question. But I want to answer the question, exactly the same question, from the perspective of a designer.
Well, I think having lived through all these epochs of the AV industry, we all basically built our own tools up to a point to solve the puzzle we were handed, right? So at WaveGuide, we built our own cloud-based tools to be able to assess 1,500 rooms, which we just did for a big Fortune 500 company, in 3 weeks, and put all that into a giant database. We needed to create something out of nothing. If you're a control system programmer, you need a way to deploy 400 rooms and push code. And if you're Ron, you want to know the heartbeat, and you want to know when something has gone belly up. And wearing my operator hat, because 70% of my employees are out there running these facilities, we joke a bit that, you know, there's long stretches of nothing to see here, all systems go, spiked with moments of sheer terror, usually right before the all hands or the board meeting or the shareholders meeting, with, wait, what just happened? And so it's not that we need a, you know, joint chiefs of whatever command and control 24/7, but when the sparks start flying, it'd be great to go, what changed in my environment in the last 24 hours? Oh, I had a power outage at 2 in the morning. I bet the reboots, okay, I can get my head around that. And there's always going to be a human element, because you don't necessarily want the machines to just take over and do the thing that they think is the fix, because it might be, okay, we need to move this meeting to another room, or I just need to bring in a new display and have the show go on. So having that awareness very quickly is super important. Like I said, from a design standpoint, it's simplicity. From an operation standpoint, it's tell me what happened that changed in my world when the sparks start flying.
It's an interesting observation, and I've noticed, for example, just even 2 days ago, Logitech introduced a system that allows you to automatically, it can tell when a meeting's ended earlier or somebody abandoned a meeting, so a room's available. But the problem is you have to only use Logitech equipment, so all those rooms that don't have it are basically not part of the system. So Eric, because of that, integrators have built their own cloud management platforms. It's no secret that some of the larger ones have built their own. What do you think about that? Do you think that's going to survive, or how would you compare what we have with Excite to that?
So that's kind of where I was you know, I'm talking to the IT professionals, right? You know, I was at a very large one that's IT is totally in control of the AV, right? So they're asking me, because they love what Microsoft has done with the UC room, right? So we go back to here going, wow, the AV integration industry needs to know about it, you know, Intune, right? So for example, they're just like, well, just do what Intune does, like what we're doing on here. I can tell if the computer's on. I can tell if there's a heartbeat, right? So hearing about conversations, I'm not trying to force MDET down anyone's throat, sitting here, wow. So what happens if Microsoft is now the remote management for it at a base level of a heartbeat for something? It's in a zero trust environment. What if there is MDET there, right? All the platforms right now, because, you know, we came into 2023, SaaS, actually, this is the first year it didn't grow going into this year. It actually flattened out, and it was only an 8% rise overall, and there's consolidation going on. So does the AV industry take a page? You know, I've created all this here. It does more. Does that make sense? It can do a lot more. I can go in and upload firmware, but that's where my ears are opening right now, and kind of trying to listen to what Ron and everyone else is like. Do I really want to do all this stuff? Or am I willing to pay for it and get a complete package? Because I'm going to buy it maybe on the licensing thing, is what I was hearing most clients do. And they're like, hey, find me something like Dante, and I'll just make sure all the devices are Dante enabled. That's the way I'll consume it, or whatever. Or do we got the big guys walking in the room now that the IT guys are very comfortable with, that might be owning the space, and we need to then look at how we address them, and then how we can add on additional features that Microsoft's not going to be ever interested in doing, right? So I know that was a big, complicated ball of mess right there, But that's kind of how we're really listening right now and trying to see which way everyone's wanting to do. And I don't even know if everyone wants to go one way. But
Well,
I know they're
remember
very
this.
happy with those pro portals right now, and they're very happy with them too.
Yeah, and remember that this is an emerging market, right? The reason why we're doing this summit is because this is the beginning. No one's behind yet on the cloud. I wish more manufacturers would step up and join the cloud party, for lack of a better word, because I think that's going to accelerate our industry. It's also going to bring us up to a different level of professionalism, Ron. Here's a quote from an actual customer. I'm done being the weatherman. I can't manage endless AV cloud platforms anymore, and the AV industry keeps falling behind IT. Why can't I manage AV the same way I manage IT in the open space platform standard? Do you relate to that, Ron?
Yes. That's an easy one. Yeah. I relate that statement and your question to what Eric was saying a moment ago, because we were talking a little bit about Intune, but I'm more interested in MTRP, and actually had an opportunity to ask Ilya at Infocom a couple of years ago. It's like, what are your plans for MTRP? Do you see yourself in that space commercially? He said, what I really want to do is be able to not just define, but help my customers control the experience itself. And whether that platform is owned by the UC platform, which is the 800-pound gorilla, or it's owned by an integrator, which I think has platforms as a way to sell managed services for a revenue stream. That's the real point of integrators having them, or it's something like an Excite. It's ultimately about how can I keep the experience going? How can that experience be what I defined it to be? And how can I do that simply without going into 17 different places? So yes, Gary, I don't know who said that to you, but oh yes, I relate.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting, Scott, because we have end users saying, yes, we want this. They literally are all saying, yes, we want this. We're not ready totally yet to deliver it. And we have manufacturers that are stepping up. But it's kind of ironic. Like, we're in this space where cloud has kind of caught everyone by surprise at how fast this has sort of evolved, especially the penetration of Excite and the fact that they can work with anyone. But I'm curious, Scott, I appreciate you nodding, Eric, because your opinion there is greatly appreciated. But Scott, I want to start with you. What is your ideal cloud platform in your eyes? If you could design it perfectly in your eyes, because you're in the middle, you have to deal with end users, you deal with integrators, and manufacturers are constantly asking your opinion on things. So I'm starting with you.
All right, we'll start with the table stakes of a single pane of glass, one place to go to see it all. You can click in by country, by city, by building, by floor, by room, see all your assets and go, this thing is amber. What's going on with that device? I would say the second thing is something that IT security is going to look at and go, oh, so it adheres to this, 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 and this. We're all good. That looks something familiar to me. I think when we talk about, ideal and crystal ball, back to something Ron said, maybe not interoperable, but aware of each other. So for instance, let's say a piece of equipment goes down in a room. Well, that room is a bookable asset. If that equipment failure is significant enough, shouldn't it send a flag to the room booking software to say, take this room offline for future bookings, and send an email to the person responsible for booking to say, there's something wrong in this room that you may want to know about. So let human beings do what humans do best, which is make a decision, but have these systems be intelligent enough that you can put the hooks in them to do the smart thing quickly, so you don't keep booking a room that's going to be out of service because the video wall just died or something.
So Eric, do you agree with all of that? And would you add anything onto that? And I ask you that because, by the way, we're not just talking about collaboration systems. We're also talking about everything AV potentially. The cloud's not going to be just used in MTR rooms, but it's going to be used everywhere else as well. So I'm curious what you would add on to that.
Sorry, Gary, who is that question to? Was that to me?
To you, to you, Eric.
Yep. No, I agree with that. What's going to happen? Here's the thing. Lens, what Legrand's doing, they're adding value to the product by using software, right? But the thing is okay. So where are you hosting yours? Azure? Where are you hosting yours? Amazon? There's got to be something out there. This is where Excite kind of does come into a play, right? I got all these things going into these buckets. How do I interconnect between where their data stores are to get back here, right? So, security wise, we can manage that pretty well. You can create a network that's capable to go out and spit out the data that's not touched anywhere else, not suggesting air gap, but there are ways to manage that on that network. But there's not a way where you got all this useful data that is being collected in these places, and maybe that's adding value to my client because I like to do that feature, right? To get to that single pane of glass. The hardest part about it, and if you're going to develop your own, and where they're at, or at least got the manufacturers on the same page, is how do I get Legrand's cloud to spit me out data that's compatible with, maybe I want something from the Pro Portal that's over here on UC on my single pane of glass. And because all this is happening outside in another cloud, I'm kind of relatively safe with that, right? So there is some uniqueness there I look at it not as remote managing, but more as I can build a custom dashboard that I want and that I need at that time, right? And you're going to have kind of what Dante did, what NDI did, a single party to come in and go, look, we are going to pay a little bit of money in here to be able to do it, but it works. And here's the value then out of it. Now, does the client pay for it per monthly? Does it get included in the costs? Those are some interesting conversations to have on there. But that platform to be able to build from the different places that the individual manufacturers are holding is probably something more of an immediate need, versus some of the things I was talking about that are coming down in the future. We got to keep an eye on.
The way we've done it so far has been the way we've done it the whole time I've been in the industry, which is that build it into the product and charge more money for the product. So that the cameras with NDI cost a little bit more than cameras without NDI. The switchers with Dante cost a little bit more than the switchers without Dante. And I feel like that is the reason why the manufacturer is the critical component here. And Pam, I'm going to throw this back to you because I don't see it being as easy as saying it's $20 a month and you buy a seat license and you're done with it. I think the manufacturer is going to have to drive this and build it into the products and make it available because we have a history of not buying software very easily. And as this is emerging, I think a lot of manufacturers who are out there who might watch this probably would heed your advice. I'm curious, you've adopted it. We're going to see it adopted across the entire Legrand AV product line at some point in time. You're doing it, brand by brand, but do you agree with that synopsis? And is that why you're doing it?
Yeah, I agree with you today. And so I want to allow some license to be perfectly wrong on this because there certainly can be some value to some subscription modeling. If you think long term, there are a number of other industries. HVAC is an example. Scott, as Scott was talking, I was thinking that's the check engine light for your HVAC system, right? Like that's what we're looking to do. And we're a little bit more complex because of some of the different protocol integration, cloud. Like I get that. But I think the short answer, Gary, is yes. Within the product, I think that's the model that feels most familiar. And within how we think about what, quite frankly, is going to be easiest for our AV integrators and some of our, like what can be best for all today. But as this evolves, I anticipate that there will probably be variation in exactly how this looks at the end of the day. And the evolution of what the value of the manufactured product is really what we're talking about here, because we're migrating from bent metal into smart bent metal, into, oh wait, now wait, you know, and we're just not quite there yet, right?
I actually one day got an email from one of your divisions that got upset at me for calling some of your stuff bent metal. So you're saying it now, this was a few
Don't
years
get me
ago. So I'm going to go back to saying it every once in a while. Ron, I'm going to give you the last word. If you could have one thing today that's about what we've been talking about all day, if you could have one feature, one thing today, right this very moment, what would that one thing be?
A standard way for every manufacturer to say, okay, here's how you can simply have my heartbeat.
All right. Well, look, that's a perfect segue into bringing Andrew Gross on. Before I bring him on, I want to thank the panel because he's going to show you exactly how to do that. Ron, I hope you stay on and watch this. I know you've already seen this demo, but maybe not the latest version of this. Ron, thank you very much for your time. Look, we know your time is extremely valuable, and we also recognize you as an industry leader. So having you on here has been invaluable, and I appreciate you taking that time. And kudos to whoever your marketing people were that set you up right there at that moment in time. That was killer branding. Eric, I cannot believe that you have the best bandwidth on here and you're in a hotel.
I know.
So I want to know what hotel brand that you're going to. Where are you staying, Eric? What hotel
Chase
brand?
Park Plaza in St. Louis. So
Yeah,
I highly recommend the internet.
That's incredible. But Scott, man, you and I have known each other a long time. I'll never forget that bus ride into down when we were in Switzerland, wherever the Zurich. The first time IAC was there. The first time we kind of got to really know each other, and it's amazing how far you've come. Very proud to see you as the leader that you are in the industry, and thank you for serving as the president of AVIXA those years because you made a big difference. And Pam, welcome to the industry. This is a crazy industry, and we need your diversity in this industry as much as anything. The background that you have, where you came from, with the industry that you came from, and being in this industry and serving us is going to serve us all really, really well. So thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.